Hi everyone. So this is a second lesson for medical physics, medical imaging in physics. We will be starting today with CAT scans. That stands for computerized axial tomography, and we'll break down the word if you're interested in the origin of words. You will need to state the components, how you have a rotating X-ray tube that produces a thin fan-shaped X-ray beam, and there's a number of detectors that pick that up, and how the computer software and the display comes about with that. How you also need to know advantages of CAT scans over an X-ray image, and as you have realized already, it involves an X-ray tube. So why is a CAT scan better than an X-ray? Then we're going to have a look at medical traces, especially tectonium 99 and fluorine 18. We also have a look at the gamma camera and how diagnosis can be done using a gamma camera, its components, and also the positron emission tomography scanner and how that works, and how to use diagnosis with PET scanning. So we're going to start first with CAT scans. So CAT scans actually stands for computerized axial tomography scans. The computerized part is because what they use is a lot of computer software that put together pictures taken by X-rays, and we'll see how that happens. The axial term refers to images taken in the axial plane. So basically, it will be like slices of the body in an axis. And the tomography actually is made up of, is a Greek word where domos means slice. So that's for the domos, and then the graphy is writing or recording. So basically, it's like taking slices and recording those slices of people. Obviously, you're not cutting them open. Once again, it's the X-rays that are doing that, and we're going to see today how that happens. Okay, so this is a CAT scan. You can see there's a lion sitting there. So what you have is a table. This is the table here that moves in and out of the gantry. So the gantry is this bigger structure. The table is capable of moving in and out of the gantry. So once again, where the X-ray machine is actually in here around it, and it spins around, and we're going to talk about how that works. But that's just a general image of the CAT scan and how it looks like. Okay, so exactly how this work. We have inside the gantry, so this is the gantry that's labeled here. A person will lay on a table that it's movable in and out, and you definitely will have an X-ray tube on one side of the gantry. So this will be your X-ray tube here, and all of these are an array of detectors on the opposite side, so they can pick the X-rays. And obviously, you know that an X-ray passes through the body, it will be absorbed, the intensity will drop by different amounts, so those changes will be picked up by the detectors on the opposite side. The X-ray tube actually produces a fan-shaped beam, and you need to definitely be able to state that. So this beam that you see here is a fan-shaped beam, and it does look like a fan. So they are very thin. That beam is very, very thin. It's about 1 to 10 millimeters thick, and it irradiates a thin slice of the patient. So basically, at one point, it will be passing through one part of the body, and as the table, obviously, it will be spinning around. So we'll get a good clear X-ray of one of the slices all around, because with an irregular X-ray, when the X-rays pass from one side, so if it's two-dimensional, it passes from one side to the next, the overlapping bones and tissues cannot be differentiated. However, in this case, since you're taking slices of each part and it's spinning around the person, so you can see the X-ray beam is passing around every single angle around the person, then obviously we'll get clear sections of the person's internal structure. And as the table moves in and out, obviously this beam will get different sections of that person's body at different parts, and it can build up an image. So each thin slice that gets x-rayed all around 360 will show basically how the intensity of the transmitted x-rays recorded by the detectors will show in the computer screen. And each time it makes a 360 rotation, a two-dimensional image or slice is taken of an x-ray. So by the time the x-ray tube made a complete revolution, the table will move through the ring, and the next revolution will be taken by the x-ray beam again, and the next until they scan the whole body or whatever part of the body they need to have a good look at. So basically what they will end up is a lot of two-dimensional slices. And these slices can actually be changed into a 3D image by using computer software. And that 3D image obviously can be rotated, zoomed around, played around with to figure out where the problem is and where it lies. Okay, so what are the advantages and the disadvantages? Well, a traditional X-ray scan is quicker. So in this case, the disadvantages of using CAT scans is that they are not as quick as X-rays. And they definitely are not as cheap as X-rays. Also, you can imagine how the size of the machine is also quite huge. So that could be another issue with having to be able to take immediate X-rays where you are in the position that you are as well. We also know that X-rays are ionizing radiation. So they're very harmful. So if you are exposed to a longer amount of time of X-ray in the situation of a CAT scan, then you can expose patients to a higher radiation dose compared to a simple X-ray. So higher radiation dose. And also you have to be extremely still during the scanning process, otherwise it will have blurs in the images produced, which is very hard for some patients. So for advantages, however, you can get a 3D image, three-dimensional image, which helps determine size, location of tumors or problems in general. And also, CAT scans have the ability to distinguish between soft tissues of similar absorption coefficients easily compared to X-rays. So that's basically just about it for the CAT scan. So it's just a spinning X-ray tube with detectors. It takes slices of X-rays and then they get put together by the computer. So if we get back to the what the actual CAT means, is computerized because the computer puts together the axial spinning of the 360 of the X-ray tube, and the tomography is the slices and the recording of those slices. So going back to the learning objectives, we have looked at CAT scans. We talked about the rotating X-ray tube that produces a thin fan-shaped X-ray beam, has a ring of detectors, and the computer software and the display, how it all comes together, and the advantages and disadvantages of CAT scans over an X-ray. So next thing we're going to look at are the medical traces. Okay, so what are the medical traces? What do we mean by medical traces? Well, Medical traces are actually radioactive substances that are injected or swallowed into a patient's body. And they're used to show the function and structure of tissues or organs in the body. So what they tend to do for the substance, the radioactive substance, to end up in an area needed, they bind the radioactive isotope to a substance used by the body. So, for example, with the Tectenium-99, it's chemically combined to sodium and oxygen, which helps it go to the brain, for example. That will show active regions of where, for example, a tumor could be. Now, Tectenium-99 emits gamma radiation, and once it does that, it actually decays into something that's a bit more stable. Even though it's not fully stable, it's still a bit radioactive. It has such a long, the daughter of Tectenium has such a long half-life that is not harmful. However, Tectenium itself has a half-life of 6 hours. Now that gives it enough time, it's long enough time for data to be recorded, but short enough to limit the radiation to which the patient is exposed to. Also, the fact that it has gamma radiation is easily picked up outside the body and is the least ionizing too. So that's another benefit of Tectenium-99. And we use it in gamma cameras, which we're going to come up to that in a second. Now with fluorine-18, it's used in PET scans. It emits beta plus, and it has a shorter half-life, about 110 minutes. That's why it's usually produced near the hospital that the procedure will be taken, because it needs to be quickly transported, and it needs to be quickly injected before it decays fully. So a few things here. Now, this can be very useful. The medical traces are really useful in terms of showing areas of damaged tissue in the heart. For example, they can help identify any active cancer tumors, and that's because cancer cells actually have a higher metabolism than healthy cells because they're growing so quickly. That means that they will be taking up much more of the tracer. Obviously, you're going to think, but how do we know where the tracer is? Well, we can identify where radiation is coming, especially with beta and gamma, since it doesn't get stopped by our tissue or our skin. So it's easy to measure, and we're going to see it's two ways. It's either using the gamma camera or the PET scan, which we're going to have a look at. But the idea is that cancerous cells tend to have a higher metabolism because they grow so fast. So they will take much more of the tracer to their side. And also they can show blood flow and activity in the brain, which they tend to use in research and treating any conditions, neurological conditions as well. Just to clarify again, where the actual tracer goes in the body depends on what it's bound to, what it's chemically combined with. And that's how they control basically which direction they will end up going in. Okay, so let's have a look at the gamma camera. So what you see here is a person laying on their back. Now, obviously, they already have been injected or swallowed a medical tracer, in this case, Tectenium-99. The collimator, so the first part of the gamma camera, so this is the whole structure of the gamma camera, and you'll need to know a few of its features and what it does. So you know that the tracer probably will be in this region of the person's body. And obviously as it decays by emitting gamma radiation, the gamma rays will be coming in different directions. They're not going to go straight through. Now the first part here that you see labeled is the collimator. It's basically a piece of lead with a lot of vertical holes in it. So that means that only gamma rays traveling parallel to those holes, so coming straight through, can pass. Otherwise, they will be absorbed by lead. And remember, lead can absorb gamma, beta, or alpha radiation either way. So that's why they use the lead material at the collimator, is to ensure that only the parallel rays to rays of X-rays, to the holes can pass through it. So then we have the scintillator, is the blue layer above the collimator that is usually made from sodium iodide. So basically what you have there is a gamma ray that will hit it. As soon as the gamma ray hits it, which is, by the way, not every single gamma ray can do that, but when the gamma rays do hit it, they tend to emit a flash of light. So basically what you have is one X-ray photon will produce thousands of visible light photons. In other words, the scintillator turns the energy of a gamma photon into a large number of visible light photons, which are much easier to detect. And then we have the light guide. You don't need to know that much about that part. It's not that important in terms of knowing it. But the next part that's very important is the array of multiplier tubes. So what we have is the array of photomultiplier tubes. So basically what you have is a single light photon that gets converted into an electrical pulse. In other words, what happens in the photomultiplier is that a single photon of a single light photon that hits the photocathode will produce a photoelectron, and that will create a potential difference which will accelerate the electron that was formed from that light, and that will give more secondary electrons after it collides with another one, and so on and so forth. But we don't need to know that much detail. It's more about what happens after it. So what happens to these electrical pulses? Will they go on to a computer where they're analyzed and put together? So the photomultiplier tubes is split. As you can see, they're split. So each one will feed off the electrical pulse into an electrical circuit, into the computer, and from there on they will be able to view that on a screen, which will obviously help them process it very quickly and figure out where the gamma photons are coming from in terms of the person's body. So it will build up a picture basically of the patient's body where the tracer is. So like I mentioned before, a gamma camera is actually different from an X-ray because it produces an image that shows the function and processes in the body rather than just the anatomy of the body. So that's what differentiates between whether you're going to have an X-ray done or whether you need to have a medical tracer injected or swallowed internally in your body. So these are the differences between them. And also to add here, gamma cameras are actually very helpful to diagnose patients without the need for surgery. However, they are still exposing people to ionizing radiation, which is not good for you. And even though they're cheaper than PET scans, they're still expensive. So it's not something that can be easily done for a lot of patients. Okay, so what's a PET scan? A PET scan is positron emission tomography. So basically it's quite similar to what we've seen in CAT scans. So they do take slices of sections of the body, but they do it through positron emission. So we set an example of a radio isotope that can be used is fluorine-18. Carbon monoxide can also be used to target different areas, but these are just examples. In fluorine-18 and carbon monoxide, when they decay, they both emit beta plus, so a positron. Remember that we've seen that in radioactivity, and also we've seen that in nuclear physics as well. Now, if a positron that's emitted from, so once again, you have your patient, you will inject the patient with the radioactive tracer. The radioactive tracer will go to the area needed. Obviously, it's chemically combined with a molecule that will help it go to that area. So it could be glucose, oxygen, or whatever. And it has a very short half-life, so this needs to be usually produced near the hospital or at the hospital with particle accelerators, but that doesn't matter right now. So once injected into the body, the tracer will go to the part that's needed. In this case, in the picture you see, goes to the brain. So once there, each positron emitted from the isotope will collide with the electrons in the organs. So positrons will collide with the electrons in the organs and annihilate. That means once it annihilates, it will produce two gamma rays that are emitted in opposite directions, so therefore energy and momentum conserved as well. And as you can notice, around the head of the person, instead of having X-ray and X-ray detectors, you only have gamma ray detectors. So the gamma camera detectors, there's a whole array of gamma camera detectors there. So basically you have the scintillator and collimator are all lined up around it and picking it up. Now what happens is that so those detectors will detect and record the gamma rays, but how can they estimate the position? Well, we know that since there's a computer that picks up those signals, and the two gamma ray photons will be traveling in opposite directions, that means the computer can determine exactly when the annihilation is taking place because of the difference in the arrival times of those photons at the opposite ends of the detectors. And that's what helps them build an image. So there will be voltage signals created and they will all be fed in one computer, which will analyze and put the signals to generate an image on a display screen. So yeah, basically the different areas of concentration of the tracer will show up as different colors or brightnesses, and it will build an image of what's going on. So that's PET scans. So usually PET scans are used for brain cancers, so like to identify what's going on in the brain. Also, they have the radio tracers they use have a very short half-life, so the patient is not exposed to radiation for a long time. However, obviously, since it's a very short period of time that the radio tracer is active, that means there's only a very limited amount of time that the patient can be scanned. So PET scans are also expensive, meaning that not a lot of hospitals can have one because they do need to have also like a mini particle accelerator nearby, and also many doctors can't use them for their patients because they have to outbalance the benefits of the patient having the PET scan and the actual cost of the PET scan, instead of also the convenience and time needed for the PET scan to take place. Okay, so coming back to what we have seen so far, we looked at the medical tracers and spoke about what that means as a medical tracer. We looked at the gamma camera and we talked about the collimator, the scintillator, the photomultiplier tubes, and how that signal gets fed into a computer and hence a display. Also how they can use the diagnosis using the gamma camera, positron emission tomography, and the diagnosis using a PET scan. So that's it. If you want to look a little bit more into new advances in medical imaging or even medical therapy, I would suggest to have a little look online about how they're trying to use magnetism to control certain objects that they can put in our bodies. But I'll give you more information if you're interested on that.